All right, good morning, everyone. I'm Joseph Banks here, Assistant Director for Career Services, and as well as the dedicated career coach for the College of Humanities and Social Sciences. And I just want to start off by thanking first everyone who's here today, as well as any future listeners that are watching this on YouTube later. Our digital takeout series is a great opportunity for us here at USU to listen to USU alums talk about their experience and discuss the different opportunities that await many of our CHAS students. So before we begin, I just want to let everybody know that they can use the chat feature to ask any questions or the question and answers to the speaker. And we also have London monitoring those to ask after the first part of the discussion. So now I'm just going to turn the time over to Andrea to introduce our guest for today.
Thank you, Joe. My name is Andrea Dahan. I am the Outreach Coordinator for the College of Humanities and Social Sciences. And as Joe said, we are so pleased to have you here with us today. And I'm going to tell you a little bit about today's guest before turning the time over to her. So today we are featuring our alum, Leigh Behunin. And Leigh is the Executive Director of Broadcast Services at Fox Sports, where she oversees the transmission of all live sports events airing on Fox, Fox Sports 1, Fox Sports 2, Fox Deportes, and Fox Soccer Plus. This includes ensuring that event logistics, facility management, and budget planning are executed. Over the 16 years at Fox, Ms. Behunin was instrumental in project managing the transmission of 6 Super Bowls, 15 World Series, 5 US Open golf tourneys, and 3 FIFA World Cups. Prior to her time at Fox, she worked on the vendor side of the industry, providing transmission services. She is also the recipient of several awards, including the Sports Technical Team Studio Remote Emmy for the 2019 FIFA Women's World Cup, the Sports Technical Team Studio Remote Emmy for the 2015 FIFA Women's World Cup, the Sports Technical Team Remote Emmy for the 2013 NASCAR on Fox, and the Sports Technical Team Remote Emmy for the 2011 MLB on Fox. So with that, I'd like to turn the time over to Leigh. And Leigh, I do want to just ask you to get us started today by telling us, how it is you came to this industry and a little bit about what it is you enjoy about your job and how you stay current in the industry that you're in.
Thank you, Andrea and Joe, for inviting me first to the Zoom call. And this is truly a very exciting opportunity after actually quite a long journey of talking with the team at USU. Dean Ward actually came to visit me back in 2018, and I was able to take him on a tour of the network facilities and our studios then. So glad to finally be to where I can talk to the students and hopefully maybe someday actually be there in person in the future. So how I chose television production, because that's really the emphasis. I've always have always been really interested in television, and I did, I don't know if some of the students have done this, but I actually started junior college, and I actually decided my first year junior college to try a couple of different career paths and see which classes really spoke to me, and I actually tried computer science, accounting, and the TV classes, and TV won. I was in love the minute I took my first TV class, and that sold me on the industry, and so that's the path I took. And then I actually transferred from U College in Northern California to Utah State my junior year, and I actually met my mentor my junior year, that first fall quarter in my TV classes, because of the fact that Utah State had more advanced equipment than I had at Butte College, and I felt the need to spend extra time learning the USU facilities. So I met my mentor then, Sheldon Amasaki, and he helped me with my career path and pointing me and giving me pointers on logging all the technical equipment that I would be working on, which actually served me well. So that's kind of what started me on the road in the television business. The biggest thing, which I highly recommend to all of you, is an internship. That was huge for me. Through my USU counselor, we discussed, my senior year, going into my senior year, what I had left credit-wise that I needed to take. And he was actually one of the professors, And he actually highly recommended to me to do an internship. And at that time, the internship program was associated with KSTU in Salt Lake City. So we worked it out that my final quarter of my senior year was basically a full-time internship at KSTU. And they were an independent station at that time. Now they're actually, ironically, a Fox affiliate, so part of our Fox family. So the neat thing at KSTU is they rotate you through all the different departments. So you literally got to experience and train on every aspect. And while towards the very end of my internship, right before I graduated, actually, an opening came up and they approached me and they hired me. So when I graduated in June 1984, I went straight into a full-time position at KSTU. And one of my fellow USU class also was hired. And then later on, another woman that was part of our graduating class, Melanie Say, also joined. And actually she stayed and is now, I believe, the VP of programming at KSTU. So she's still there. So, so after about 2.5 years at KSTU and, getting the experience of, again, doing everything from air master control, camera operator, to editing. I was actually the promotions editor. Former KSTU employees had moved on to Los Angeles. They wanted to go to, the bigger market and seek their career path there. And they said, you've been there long enough. And it was about 2.5 years. And they said, you need to come to Los Angeles and like we have and, see what happens. So I did that. I moved out in the end of 1987 and, started looking for a job because I didn't have one. And I think now, retrospect, to do that is in some ways, I suppose intimidating or scary, but for some reason I wasn't scared and I wasn't intimidated to do that. I was excited. And I did find a job. My tape experience, actually, that I had at KSTU got me the job. And that was my introduction to the satellite transmission world. I was hired by Wold Communications, and who was a pioneer in the satellite industry. And one of the things that you probably have heard the word syndication. Syndication is all those shows that some actually are the ones like Price is Right, Jeopardy, Judge Judy, all of those kind of shows. And the contract they had was for all of the shows that were played back. And actually KSTU, when I was at KSTU, I used to record the very shows that I was now sending out. So I understood now the other side of it and learned about transmission. And one thing that completely sold me about the transmission and staying with this as my career path was 1 month after starting that job, Wold Communications was supporting clients at the 1988 Super Bowl at the Rose Bowl. And after only a month of being at the company, they had me come out to the Rose Bowl to help cable for the Rose Bowl. And on game day, on Super Bowl Sunday, my assignment was in support of the New York affiliate, because it was the Giants, New York Giants were playing, and they needed to support the affiliate when the game was over and cover the celebration. So in the fourth quarter of the Super Bowl, they took me out onto the field with all the screaming fans, gave me some BNC connectors for the camera that I was going to connect to, and I stood in the end zone, the back of the end zone, waiting for the game to end. And then the minute the game ended, here came the camera crew from New York, and I handed them off all the BNC connectors so they could immediately start their coverage. And all the New York Giants were in the end zone with us celebrating, and the noise. And I was like, I think I like this. I think I like being in an industry that allows me that. And I'm like, I've been here a month. And so that just really struck me, and I was sold. And so I stayed actually and that was considered the vendor. And so something to think about in your career path is you whatever you're choosing to do, there's always a vendor side to every industry that supports a particular business, because businesses cannot own everything. It gets to be very expensive. So they will vendor up with those that are supporting that particular industry to, do the third-party services. So I went the vendor side, which was supporting the networks, all the broadcasters, because again, they cannot own and operate everything that it takes to do their business. So that's how I started off in that. And so again, it was the syndication. After a few years, Wold actually merged and became Keystone with another company, which introduced live studio coverage. We had a studio, as well as we did sports, and then we continued on with the syndication. So I did, I covered things like the '94 earthquake in Los Angeles, the Rodney King, that whole situation when that verdict came down, and a lot of those kind of events. Eventually, another merger. Another thing is, that's another thing about business. Those things happen. You go through mergers. So we had another merger, which became, the Keystone name continued. And then at that time, I had an opportunity to change from the technical operations side over to what I'm doing today, which is transmission logistics and coordination. And that focus was sports. So that was my introduction to be specifically directed towards sports, and then learn more about what all that involved compared to doing syndication or other types of live events. And after about 11 years on the industry side of domestic and all that, I actually jumped over to Wold International, which one of the gentlemen that I had worked with at Wold Communications, offered me a position for Wold International. And their job, and again, here's another example of another type of vendor, their focus in the industry was the international broadcasters. We were doing services for Latin America, Argentina, Japan, the UK, all of these different broadcasters, because they're following maybe their, president or whatever their leaders are, or they're covering sports events. And so some of the highlights, I would say my biggest highlight from that was being able to go to Argentina for 6 weeks for the 2001 FIFA Boys Championship, where we had 5 different stadium locations throughout Argentina, where 26 countries were playing for the championship. I was the project manager of this event, where we actually built a small teleport at the stadium in Buenos Aires. And so all of the origination was from there. So our responsibility was the transmission back to DirecTV Latin America, which was airing this event. So I spent 6 weeks in Argentina, going through the tournament and all the different rounds, and making sure that the transmission from each city within Argentina was then brought back to our base in Buenos Aires. And then at that point, it was integrated out and back to DirecTV Latin America in Long Beach. And so that was my first experience as being a project manager, and overseeing something of that magnitude, and obviously all the hours working with another vendor that was there that was handling some of the production integration. And that really, I think those kind of steps in your career just really build your confidence, and knowing to say, hey, I can handle this, but also, again, layering on those additional skill sets that are needed to take you to the next step. And then later on, towards the end of my time at Wold International, we were involved in the FIFA Seoul World Cup, which gave me some fiber experience, because that was one of the things we were providing. And then lo and behold, unfortunately, Wold International had some issues, so that company had to dissolve. But then through a former coworker from my Wold days, when they heard I was looking, this position at Fox on the network side, Fox Networks Engineering and Operations, became open, and literally, as my friend put it, it was if they wrote the job for you. It's exactly what you've been doing with transmission and your technical background and everything. And that's how I started in 2004, August of 2004. I just had my 16-year anniversary last month. And the thing that, to keep in mind as well. Sometimes when you think, okay, I'm at another job and it's the next step up in my career, there will always be those people who are like, well, who are you and what can you do? We're on the network. What can you do? Because you came from the vendor side. And so, you always kind of sometimes have to prove yourself again. So here was my world, talking about a steep learning curve. I started 2 weeks before the NFL season when Fox was going HD. So not only did I have to quickly learn the facility, but also just the workflow of a network, which is completely different than, say, the affiliate coming from the KSTU experience. It's a whole different world when you join the network, because instead of it just being KSTU, you're delivering to 200 affiliates and everything that they're seeing. So let's see. So my visibility of what I was doing just became much greater and obviously of more importance. And just 2 months after starting, I did my first World Series, which happened to be the infamous Boston Red Sox World Series. And, they were sweeping. And the production wanted to do all these live remotes, as you often see now when a team's about to win and they want to show the home viewers, or they go to a bar and, people celebrating. So the day of that final game, that morning, the senior VP of production called a meeting, which just my boss and myself, we were the only ones in early enough. We were the only ones that showed up for the meeting. And he laid out how they wanted to do like 4 remotes around Boston to show the celebration of the anticipated win of the Boston Red Sox. And I had to scramble and put all those different remotes together and coordinate, the on-site, the transmission to get it back to Los Angeles. And it all came off. Boston won. And that kind of, for that senior VP that was over the operations, who didn't know me, I'll never forget how that next day in our meeting that he held every Thursday, he came and shook my hand and said, "Well done." And from that point on, he never doubted me again. I had solidified my ability to do the job, and that was huge. That was a huge thing when you're going and making that jump to, which was always my goal, to work for a network. That was my dream job. I had achieved my dream job, but just knowing that, guess what? All of the past experience that you bring along with you, it applies. All of it applies. Going back to even KSTU, the 11 years on the vendor side, you take all those skill sets, all that confidence that you gain in that knowledge, and you take it on to the next level. And so I've been on the network side, and just so you understand, the network side, my team, not only did we deal with sports, because obviously that's predominant, but then everything that aired that was on the Fox side, American Idol, So You Can Think You Can Dance, the Emmy Awards, anything that on the entertainment side that was airing, I was responsible for all of that. So all of those live events I am responsible for. So back in 2018, through some changes, probably many of you know that Disney has bought a lot of the assets of Fox, and we're going through that 2-year TSA to transition and split apart. So right before that happened, Fox Sports made the decision to take over my team, because predominantly we do sports. So I moved officially to Fox Sports at that time. Before I still dealt with them, but it's kind of like internal, moving around. And so now obviously everybody I was working with before I'm still working with, but now I actually report to him. And I love being exposed to these engineers, because that's really what sports is. They have to engineer these big projects and put together all of those things. And I actually brought a slide. I've kind of not shown all the slides. Am I good to share the slide right now? So I want to show you guys an example of what I do. So, because transmission is something that right now is not taught in college. It was very much something I learned on the job, which is very common. You're going to learn things that you maybe never even heard about when you were in school. Because I always ask the interns when they come into Fox, which there is an internship program every summer. Check it out, because every summer Fox Sports hires interns. So just throw that out there as something to think about in the future. So I want to share. Okay, so everyone should see my screen now. So this is from last year, and this is what Thursday night football looks like. Unfortunately, this year it's going to look a little bit different just because of the COVID, and we can talk about that in a minute. But all of we have our production truck, obviously is where the game is originating from. So I hired the satellite trucks, the satellite capacity. In the case of Thursday night football, it's actually a simulcast with NFL Network. I actually arrange and book all of the NFL Network transmission as well, which is actually separate from the Fox transmission, but we do share the satellite capacity. And then our pregame show has been coming from our Fox New York, where Fox News Channel originates from. We use one of their studios and do kind of a small pregame. So I coordinate all the connectivity from New York back to our Los Angeles Network Center. We also use a combination of fiber and IP. IP has become very huge in the transmission sports world. Everything, it's video over IP is how we kind of refer to it. But you actually can send muxes where we use a 10-channel mux that comes in from the remote site. We bring it into Los Angeles, we break it all out so we can see all of these different channels, which is used for on-air, but also for editing purposes and what have you. And then as well as we just started with the start of Thursday night football, I coordinate sending out the 4K version of Thursday night football for those of you who are able to receive 4K. I know there's not a lot of that group yet, but it's an ever-growing industry. So this year as well, we will be responsible for that, but also we do that for college football. At least one game for college football is also distributed in 4K. So that's a new element to this world. So that just gives you an example of all of the aspects that goes on for Thursday night football that you would never imagine happens. So I'll stop sharing this. So that gives you a perspective of when you hear the word transmission, what that means and what all my team is doing. Because everything that airs on Fox Sports, and as Andrea mentioned, Fox Sports 1, 2, Fox Deportes, and Fox Soccer Plus, all goes through my team, and it all requires some level of transmission. I would say baseball, we're obviously getting ready to go to postseason baseball. And we've had lots of meetings about that. Obviously, NFL started. And then right now for Thursday night football, we actually work with NFL Network, and I book the transmission. And they use our announce team, as well as our rules, an analyst, Mike Pereira. And so I work with that and make sure that NFL Network has that available to them for their broadcast. So I hope that gives you kind of perspective of what I do. And I would say one of my big highlights since I've been with Fox was several years ago, we did the NFL pregame from Afghanistan at Bagram Air Base, and I arranged all the transmission logistics for that. And that's one of the wonderful things I like about Fox Sports is that we support the military, and usually every year we do a remote from either an international based location, or last year we went to West Point, and that was very cool to put that together. So I hope that gives you kind of a perspective of what I do now.
Wow, Leigh, that's such a great history that you've got there, and a lot of good experience and stuff. I wanted to just shift the conversation a bit to we talked a little bit about COVID and kind of responses there, and right now, I think, many organizations, they prepare for scenarios, right? And you come up with like contingency plans, what if this happens? But fortunately, not, very many of them actually get to be implemented. And so just kind of, for you looking back at like the start of COVID and comparing it to what you guys are doing today, what changes did you find was the easiest ones to pivot to? And what kind of helped you prepare for those changes?
Well, fortunately, Fox sports, because again, California is was much more restrictive, so that was another aspect that we had to deal with. It's just the limitations in the different states. And then, as we all know, sports really shut down altogether as just a ripple effect, both domestically and internationally. So Fox has always had an environmental health and safety team as well as a security team. So they obviously immediately jumped into action on what all that means in terms of all the PPE gear and what have you, as well as my division, which is field operations, everything that is on site to make the event happen, production trucks and all of that. And so since sports had stopped, one of the sports that we were already had started with is the NASCAR season. We'd already begun that. So we quite right away were already talking to NASCAR, and NASCAR was sorting their side of the fence in terms of the race teams, how to protect them, how do we go back and do that. But then Fox field operations had to determine, okay, what about the production trucks? And we started working through that process of number one, which is true across the board, is the number of people you can have on site has been greatly reduced. And so they had to think through, even in the production truck, okay, what can be remoted? Because one of the good things about IP is you can remote control of a graphics machine. You can remote control an EVS playback machine. So what they did was, instead of those people going to the remote, I had to buy more IP connectivity. And in our network facilities in Los Angeles, they basically created this area, ironically, in an old tape vault, because we know tape's kind of gone. So we had this empty tape vault, and they started building workstations. So these EVS operators and graphic operators can remotely control the equipment that is sitting in the production truck. So they kind of narrow down the list of people that absolutely needed to be in that production truck. And so that was step one. Obviously, they had to put in the plexi dividers to give them that safe 6 feet distance, right? To create the social distancing. The other thing we did, which was fortunate for us, we have a Fox Charlotte Studios, which is kind of NASCAR Central. As if anybody who knows NASCAR, Charlotte's kind of NASCAR Central. And so we already had some studios in that facility and have a show called Race Hub that we air, which features some race car drivers. So we thought, okay, since the announcers, which is Jeff Gordon and Mike Joy, cannot be at the track, because again, the limitation, we had them call the races at our Fox Charlotte studios. So we had the remote truck at the track. We had at Darlington or Texas, wherever we were at. Then we had the announcers sitting in our Fox Charlotte studios. We had some of the production at our Los Angeles facility, and we had to make the production truck the integrator of all of those signals. So all of, Fox LA, Charlotte, the track, all of that was delivered back to the track via IP, and it was all integrated in and timed out. The timing is really, Joe, the thing that is the trickiest when you're working in remote locations. It's sorting the timing aspects so that when Jeff Gordon or Mike Joy was calling the race, it wasn't like, several seconds later to whatever is happening. And so that was something that we worked through that process. The other thing they did was create zones. So if you worked in the production truck, that was zone A. If you were a cameraman, you're in zone B. And they kept that group together so that they could kind of track and minimize them interacting with other zones. So everybody was in different zones for the rest of our NASCAR season. And that was what Fox chose to do. NASCAR did a little bit different things, but that's what we chose to do. And my boss was thrilled when we made it through the entire season without one single COVID case. So our plan worked. Now, now baseball and NFL is different. And so we're, adapting to that. They actually are having to do COVID testing to be on site for college football or for NFL. So that was part of the protocol that Major League Baseball and NFL wanted us to follow. So, and for baseball, none of the talent, none of the commentators have been on site. So one of the things I've had to do was find studio locations. We've been like, for instance, this Saturday we have 2 games where we have St. Louis and we have Tampa Bay. And so on our Tampa Bay game, we're going to have John Smoltz and Ken Rosenthal originating from a studio at MLB Network in New Jersey. And then we'll have Aaron Goldsmith originating from a studio in Seattle. So I have to arrange getting them from those locations back to Los Angeles where the game is being brought in. And again, timing that all together. And with the talent, and we have MLB, we have kits that we delivered to MLB Network and Seattle, again, using IP as well as fiber so that the talent can see each other. Because one of the things with baseball, you want to be able to see the other person's, verbal and nonverbal skills. And the way to do that is for them actually to be able to see in their monitors, besides the game itself, what the other person's doing and see how they're responding. And that really has helped in that timing of making it sound like they're sitting next to each other. So that's one of the things, Joe, that was one of the challenges technically that we had to really sort through because, again, the limitation. Now, fortunately for college football and NFL, we are being allowed in most cases to return and have announcers in the booth again, which is great, really great in terms of just logistics. They are putting up the plexi in between where they're sitting, so they are doing that within the booth. So, but I can tell you that I'm personally happy that they're on site because it's not quite as so many logistics I have to sort out each week.
Leigh, you have alluded to a lot of the technology that has changed even in the time you've been in the field, when we talk about the advent of things like HD and 4K and using IP. If you're thinking about our current students who might be looking to go into the field, what are some of the upcoming changes and opportunities that are opening within this field, and how might someone who is interested in it start preparing themselves in terms of classes they could take or skills they could start acquiring as a student or as a young employee?
Well, I would say number one, at the library or even online, because everything's available online, if you're interested in the TV industry, get familiar with the trade magazines. Broadcasting and cable is a very big one. TV technology is another big one. And if you're of the sports interest, there's an online newsletter called the Sports Video Group that my boss, Michael Davies, actually chairs that currently. And anyone in the sports industry, whether it's college or professional, other networks, they all are members of the Sports Video Group. And all of those have within them jobs. All of them have job opportunities, part of their magazine. So I think getting familiar with those trades, and I know there's trade magazines for all industries. So if you're not interested, obviously television, find the industry magazine that speaks to your career, because they all exist. I just happen to be, obviously, those are the ones that I look at, read through. TV technology is great for, and sports, and the Sports Video Group. Really, if you want to know the cutting edge of what's going on, make those two a priority and read through them, because the reason Fox Sports is often featured in the Sports Video Group, because we do our groundbreaking in technology. And one of the things we introduced that none of the other broadcasters was doing is the crowds. We started that with baseball. We found a vendor that specialized in the ability to create the stadium sound as if a full crowd was there, which if you've watched ESPN or some other channels, they have chosen not to do that. And so those are the kind of things, those enhancements is something that I know Fox Sports tends to be on the cutting edge and leaders of the industry for that reason. So those three I highly recommend. I think in terms of the industry in general, I think it's actually much broader than when I graduated, because you have Amazon, you have Hulu, you have Netflix, you have all of these streaming companies that are in broadcast. Actually, as part, because I didn't talk about it, but part of the thing I do with Thursday Night Football is I work with Amazon, because Amazon is providing through with the NFL contract their version of the game. So I've been working with Amazon to bring in, their feed. It goes to our facility, and then I help distribute it to their portals for actually, obviously, online viewing. But and a lot of people from Fox Sports have gone and now work for Amazon because of how much that business on the Amazon site is blowing up. So outlets that you would never, it wasn't even possible in 1984 when I graduated. Obviously, I'm older and things have happened, but that's something to think about. Think about those other outlets and digital. Fox Sports has their own digital app. So digital content really is a huge growing business to consider. And actually, keep in mind, they're all businesses. So if you're in accounting, if you're in HR, if you're in payroll, if you're in operations or facilities, that's all needed in any industry. So even if you're not majoring in, television production or, that side, but yet you would like to work in the sports industry, keep in mind, research is huge, by the way, in television. If you're into research, if that's part of your world, huge for television. All of those fields translate to the television industry. If you're interested just to be around that, it's all required. And so, people tend to forget that you have to have your degree in television. No, you do not. But if your area is any of those, you can still work in the television industry in some way, shape, or form. So think about that when you're looking at jobs and looking at LinkedIn. LinkedIn is very big, by the way. I'm on it. Actually, that's pretty much my networking site is LinkedIn. So I also recommend LinkedIn if you're not already on there. It's a great resource. Most people in the industry that I work with, they're all on there as well. And actually, I find USU alumni on quite a few on LinkedIn. So that's another one I suggest. So I hope that kind of gives you some ideas when you're looking around at jobs and what you're thinking about. Just think broader. Definitely, cast your net widely.
Great. So Leigh, the next question I was going to ask was actually very similar. Somebody who loves entertainment or somebody who loves sports, what are some of the steps that they could take to get into that field, even if they haven't had the experience and stuff? And you touched on a lot of good points on that. So, but also related to that, I was wondering, Leigh, because I know that a lot of our chat students, and maybe even you yourself when you were getting in, talking to you now, you've got a lot of that technical knowledge that comes, in your field that I think somebody coming in might think, oh, I don't have the right knowledge to be able to do these kind of things. How did you feel? Did you feel like you had enough, like when you started back into this field that you have now? And how did you kind of build up on that knowledge to keep up with the trends and everything?
Really good question, Joe. I think for me, and this goes back when I was at KSTU, because working with the engineers at KSTU, I am not afraid to ask questions. One of the things I found, even at Fox, people are often reluctant to ask questions for fear it makes them look like they don't know what they're doing or they are not as informed about a situation. I don't have that fear. My fear is I want to understand what I need to do and how to do it. You can memorize something, and I even talked to my team about this. You can memorize something, but that doesn't mean you know it. You're just memorizing something that someone has shown you, A to B equals C or something like that. But if you don't understand what A and B and C represent and what the goal of that is, it's a different level of understanding. And so literally from the first week that I was at Fox, and even at KSTU, I developed a relationship with the engineers, and I would go and pick their brains all the time. I wanted to understand the tape machines. I wanted to understand the scopes and setting up the video levels. I wanted to understand, obviously, when I was a camera operator, that aspect. Same thing when I went to the network, because as I mentioned earlier, it was 2 weeks before we started, HD and sports. And so I found out real fast who the engineer in charge of that team, the RF team, and I started picking his brain about the network distribution and the muxes they use and all of that. I have never been afraid to ask the questions. And actually what that shows the person that you go to is that you are genuinely interested in doing it right and having that knowledge. And to this day, and as I was mentioning a few minutes ago, when I became Fox Sports, I work with 2 wonderful engineers, in Brad Cheney and Kevin Callahan. Kevin Callahan puts together World Cup and NFL, and Brad Cheney is baseball, college football, and was golf, and sadly we no longer have that contract. But they specialize in those areas and all the technical requirements. And I pick their brains as well. I mean, since I've become members of their team. And so I want to understand all of it, not just, oh, you want me to do this? Okay, I'll go do it. No, I want to understand what we're achieving, what the ultimate goal, and what that piece of equipment or what that 1 gig of IP, what are we going to be doing with that, so I understand it. And so I encourage all of you, please do not be afraid to ask questions. Please, this is how you learn. And again, you're showing the people that you're asking that question of that you have a genuine desire to understand it, not just, okay, you tell me to do it, I'll go do it. Because I feel like that served me well. And actually, since I've been at Fox, people come to me now as a resource because I ask the questions and I understand operational workflow through that entire building that we're in. And some people have chosen not to do that. And so I can tell you all the time, other departments come to me and they're like, oh, well, we know Leigh will know the answer. And I mean, and that's a nice compliment to have, that people trust me with that, but it was going back to me wanting to know myself. And so again, please, I cannot stress that enough. Do not be afraid. There are no bad questions. Truly, I know sometimes you hear that from your parents or even from your professors, but it's true that you need to understand. And I think, and I'm not an engineer, Joe. I don't profess to be one or play one on television. I am someone who genuinely is interested and wants to learn. I want to understand what I'm doing. And with that, I mean, imagine this, Joe. I work with NFL Network. I work with MLB Network. All the other networks, Fox News, have corresponding people who do equivalent. This is the people I work with. I mean, how cool is that? And we all respect each other because we know what it takes to get to that level. And, the fact that we support each other as well is pretty cool too. I mean, I would never imagine when I graduated in '84 that these are the people that know my name and know who I am. So, and that all goes to me being open and receptive and humbling myself, because it does take a certain amount of humbling yourself to go and ask the question. And again, and interestingly, this is the funny part, I found out one of the other things I was tasked with when I was hired back in 2004 was I was given 6 months to create a standards operating procedure binder for my team because it didn't exist. Imagine that, a network, and there was no SOP, and I had to build that. And what I started to do was I created Visio diagrams very similar to the one I just showed you to document all of the resources, facilities, all of our different channels. And for my team, it was also for the Spiner, but it was for me to learn it. And pretty soon engineering got wind that I was doing that. And they're like, can we have your diagrams? Because we would like to have that as well. And so I'm like, sure, you know, and again, how interesting that engineering didn't have that. And they were coming to me to give them all the different diagrams that I was creating actually for my team, because I was asking the questions. Well, where's this? Oh yeah, we don't have that in writing. I'm like, okay, then I'm going to create that. So that's another thing to think about, guys. Be genuinely, besides being genuinely interested in what you're doing, find out where there's gaps. I mean, if you're seeing like, you know, I'm not seeing how to do this particular workflow or this particular procedure, and your boss may say, oh, you're right, that's not in writing, and that might, you know, make you the person that's involved in help writing that procedure and documenting these things, because anymore so much is about protocol documentation. And especially if you have a training binder for new employees, that's become very, very important for most industries. So think about that too. If you're documenting it, it could very well be that your employer or your direct boss is not. So something to think about as well.
Leigh, before I ask you a final question, I do want to remind our audience listening that in a few minutes, we're going to be starting the Q&A, which London will be taking us through. So if you have any questions for Leigh that she hasn't already addressed or that you'd like to see her address in the Q&A portion, please use that Q&A feature to send your questions, and London will move through those shortly. Leigh, the last question we want to ask you is, you know, as a director, you probably work with a whole team of people, and you've alluded to some of the engineers you work with, for example. Can you tell us a bit about the different roles that exist in your group and the type of people you look for when you're hiring?
Well, specifically for my team, I think that obviously some past experience, you know, in the industry is helpful. Have we hired people without TV industry? Yes. Then the other major skill is your software computer skills. I mean, all of our trafficking software that documents all our resources, all the facilities at the network center are all in that system. And everything that we do, every feed game is an event in this trafficking system. And having that familiarity, I mean, I think I hate to say with your generation, because obviously that wasn't something for my generation when I was graduating, but obviously you have access to all of that. Your skill sets are already put you in, just the fact of, you know, the time period that you're going up in already puts you in an excellent position of being exposed to all that and having a confidence in your software skills. But obviously, you know, Word, Excel, you know, for me, diagramming is you know, Lucid Chart and Visio are part of that. But just having that skill set with software, having that comfort level. Excel is huge. If you have a strength in Excel, that bodes very well for anything. I can tell you in the television industry, because everyone uses Excel heavily. So those are the things I work for. Someone who fast pace, because television is a fast paced industry. Word to the wise here, do not go into the TV business if you want holidays off and weekends off. Not happening in the television industry. I mean, and that will shut the door on you really fast. If you're like, yeah, I never want to work a holiday, and I never want to work a weekend, I never want to work overtime. If TV is not your business, please go and look elsewhere for another business. I've been working 12-hour days, guys, and that gives you some perspective, because that's how busy we are. Because at the end of the day, the game's got to get on the air, and you have constant deadlines. So it is a very deadline-driven industry. If you're someone who gets stressed out a little easy, that wouldn't be a good option for you. So I think someone who likes the fast pace and welcomes that and kind of thrives in that, then absolutely, that all works. And if you have a natural skill set, which a lot of people do, and I've found that I guess I kind of do have a natural skill set to being organized and detailed, maker, and you're a big planner, then yes, you would be more than welcome into my group, because that shows me you have the skill set to learn the rest of it. Because I've taught many of people on how to book transmission, and they either have gone on to other jobs or they're part of my management team. So, and then obviously, as I mentioned before, Andrea, a lot of engineers, and then obviously, you know, the cameramen and all the other aspects. Those are the people that I tend to work with, as well as obviously the vendors, all the companies that I used to work with when I was on the vendor side. So here's another thing for everyone. Never burn your bridges, guys. Always treat everyone respectively, because you never know when that person's going to cross your path at another job. And I've learned that in my industry specifically. Everyone just tends to move around. Like people that I worked with at CBS, they're now at MLB Network, and they remember you. So always maintain those good, positive relationships, even if maybe they're difficult to work with, because you never know when that person might come up again in your career, and you don't want them to remember you in a bad light. So keep that in mind too as you start your career.
Leigh, thank you so much for everything you've shared so far. I'll just introduce myself to everyone watching at home. I'm London, and I'm the events intern for CHAS, and I'm going to be asking some of the questions that our viewers have had. One of our viewers says, I'm interested in stage manager opportunities for sports broadcasts. So how do I make my way into this industry, or are there any key people that I need to talk to?
Very good question. Couple of things. Again, when you're looking for jobs, be open-minded, because if you have no stage manager experience, then you're not going to be hired as a stage manager. But possibly you go in as a production assistant, or, you know, production assistants are huge for any event, and whether it's remote or actually at the studio location. But it's an open door that you're more likely to get hired into with no experience. And then that will put you in the realm to observe another stage manager and pay attention to the skill set that get experience in the production environment. One thing of note, now if you're at a smaller station, that's a really great opportunity to start your career. I would definitely look at, you know, obviously the Utah market, the Idaho market. I believe USU has a relationship with some stations in Idaho. So that's a great entry point. Know that if you want to go to a network level, it is union. So I'll just warn you of that. A lot of the technical positions, and once you get to that level, and then therefore even the makeup people, believe it or not, at you know, hair at Fox, you have to be union. So then you're hired that way, and so therefore you join the union, and then that makes you available. So just something, once you get to that network level, then it is a union position. And actually I work with a lot of union engineers that support what we do on the network side. So that's something to keep in mind. But I would definitely pursue at a local station as your entry point, because that's going to give you the best opportunity to learn, to see the skill sets to become a stage manager, and then make note of that and look for opportunities where you could step in and fill that position. So I would definitely suggest looking at the local station level first as your entry point, through either a production assistant or some other position related to the studio.
Thank you for that. Now, you also mentioned that Fox itself has some internship opportunities. So what steps does an individual need to take to kind of be noticed or be accepted into different internship opportunities, or what advice do you personally have for those people?
Well, first, go to foxcareers.com. That's our HR website. And every summer, there are summer internships, and they have them actually throughout not only Fox Sports, but and the network site as well. And they are specific to a different area. Like I mentioned, research, the programming research group will have an internship. The business operations will have an internship. Production will have an internship. I've met a few interns actually, not this summer, obviously there's some limitations this summer, but last summer we had a couple of summer interns working for Fox Sports, and they sat in on all of our meetings. They got that exposure, which I think is amazing, what they get to listen to and be a part of. So really, it is very specialized. So you just have to apply for those. I know a lot of other companies do the same thing, but yeah, definitely check it out. I've met students from all over the US. It's amazing how many people will come to LA just to have the opportunity to have that summer internship. But look early, do not wait until the summer, because they go fast. They go really fast. As you can imagine, they're very popular. So put foxcareers.com on your browser and check it out. And I can tell you, we're building a facility in Arizona right now, Phoenix. They are hiring like crazy. So also check that out. Again, it's by city when you go into the site, so you can look at that. But it also, just looking at jobs and seeing descriptions helps you point your learning and your skill sets toward that, so you can see all the time what is actually needed to do that job. So that's another thing. Check out jobs, even if you're not in a position, to be hired by right now. It lets you know the skill sets that particular employer is looking for. You can never underestimate that power of just looking at jobs and seeing job descriptions.
So I want to thank all of our viewers for asking their questions. Unfortunately, this is the last one that we're going to have time for. So Leigh, is there anything you wished you would have done differently while progressing in your career?
That's a tough one, because I've been so blessed that again, going back to the asking questions, I think if I had been fearful of that, I would not be where I am today. Let alone be able to project manage an event from Buenos Aires with, being that remote for 6 weeks period of time. I really think that built confidence. So if anything, I suppose now would be just having the time to take more software training, because it gets to be where you're so busy that it's hard to go, okay, I'm going to go take 2 hours and wish I had more time to. Sheldon telling me track and make note on your resume, everything and every equipment, whatever your experience is, note it starting with college, because you forget to do it otherwise. That's the other thing.
All right, well, thanks so much, Leigh, for just being here and telling us about your experiences and such. I definitely want to echo the same thing about the burning bridges. As somebody who has left working with USU and then has come back, it was definitely my connections and the people that I've worked with before that has brought me back here, and it's good that I was able to keep those connections. And then also the internships, yeah, highly recommend that as well for students to do internships. And even if it's there's some that might have a long application, but if you're talking to those smaller organizations, those local companies and such, even picking up a phone and just calling them, usually that's a good way to get that connection and seeing what opportunities they have. So thank you again so much, Leigh, for being with us here today.